As America's government shutdown nears historic lengths, 42 million people face a stark reality. Half a benefit means half a meal. Courts have ordered action, yet the Trump administration is delivering only partial SNAP payments, tapping $4.65 billion in contingency funds while refusing to use billions more in available tariff revenues. With food banks overwhelmed and states struggling with outdated systems, hunger is no longer just a crisis. It has become a leverage. This isn't just about budgets. It's about who gets fed, who gets hurt, and whether basic needs are still right or a bargaining chip. I'm Hela Al-Hamalawi. Welcome to In Depth. Axios has reported that recent decision by the Trump administration to partially fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, for November is a temporary fix amidst the ongoing government shutdown. This move, made under court order, aims to quickly provide some benefits to up to 42 million Americans who rely on the program for food. However, this partial funding creates significant challenges. States must now implement complex changes to distribute reduced benefits, which could lead to delays of days or weeks for households to receive any money. This uncertainty has heightened the panic among families and increased the strain on food banks. Critically, the administration's stance on using contingency funds during the shutdown has drawn sharp criticism, with opponents accusing the government of weaponizing hunger to gain political leverage. The future of SNAP funding beyond November remains entirely unclear, escalating this major humanitarian and political crisis. According to The Guardian, the political standoff in the U.S. has reached a critical humanitarian stage following Senate Republicans striking down a Democratic motion to fully fund SNAP. This action confirms the deep partisan divide, leaving the nation's largest anti-hunger program in severe jeopardy amid the prolonged government shutdown. This rejection means only partial benefits can be issued from a small contingency fund, increasing food insecurity for millions of families. The Democrats have powerfully criticized this strategy, directly accusing President Donald Trump of weaponizing hunger against vulnerable citizens to gain leverage in budget negotiations. Ultimately, this political maneuver highlights a disturbing trend where the welfare of U.S. citizens is reduced to a bargaining chip. The resulting uncertainty and, of course, strain on food banks reveal the high human cost of the extended legislative deadlock, with no clear resolution for reopening the government in sight.
The Trump administration announced Monday that it will partially fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for November, a critical decision made amid the ongoing government shutdown. The move, affecting nearly 42 million Americans, came after two federal judges ordered the government to continue financing the nation's largest food aid program on an emergency basis. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, which oversees the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, had initially planned to freeze all payments starting November 1st. The program, costing more than $8 billion per month, serves about 1 in 8 Americans and is a cornerstone of the national social safety net. Facing lawsuits from more than 24 states and mounting judicial pressure, the administration turned to a $4.65 billion emergency fund to keep the program operating. This amount will cover roughly half of the usual benefits, meaning people who rely on electronic benefit transfer cards for grocery shopping will receive only half of their typical monthly assistance. A 2025 survey by the U.S. Department of Agriculture highlights the significance of this reduction. showing that the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program participants depend on the program for over half of their monthly food at home expenses. While the partial funding offers temporarily relief, officials warn that exhausting the emergency fund potentially sets the stage for a repeat crisis in December if the government shutdown is not resolved soon.
To provide more analysis, joining us from Washington, Mr. Peter Rolfe, contributing editor at Newsweek. Welcome to Q News. And also Mr. Peter Tanos, chairman of Links Investment Advisory. Welcome to Q News. I will start with you, Mr. Rolfe. Now, with courts forcing action and food banks overwhelmed, is the Trump administration using hunger as leverage to break democratic resistance?
If your question is ridiculous. First of all,
my question is ridiculous?
Is ridiculous. Using hunger as a weapon, nonsense.
Why? This is not my question, by the way. This is the report, sir. This is the report of Axios. This is not my word. This is what Axios reported. So it's not my question. It is news report. Thank you.
Axios has it wrong.
Then it's not my question. It's the media outlet. You can explain that. You can explain that in simple words.
As a weapon is nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's offensive. I'm sorry.
Well, your words are offensive, sir. Thank you. I would move to Mr. Tanos. Mr. Tanos, how does freezing full SNAP payments during a shutdown affect consumer spending, retail markets, and the broader U.S. economy?
Of course it does. There are 42 million people on SNAP payments. Add to that another 2 million people who aren't getting paychecks now because the government is shut down. And it'll obviously have an effect on the economy if it continues. There's some optimism this morning that this will be resolved within the next week. And it better, because Thanksgiving is coming up in a couple of weeks. And on top of everything else, it's one of the busiest travel days in the country. So you can imagine, with the air traffic controllers not getting paid, what a disaster it will be on top of the disaster already inflicted by the shutdown.
I'd like also to ask you, Mr. Tanos, if you see that that SNAP is considered a cornerstone of the national social safety net, and do you believe that the Trump administration, truly grasped the critical nature of this $8 billion monthly program when treating it as a discriminatory item during a shutdown?
So to your previous question to the other Peter, the fact is that nobody's trying to deliberately starve people. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is a political dispute where each side is trying to blame the other for the fact that the government is shut down and these payments are not being made. Nobody's trying to deliberately starve anybody. They're simply trying to score political points. So that's pretty much where we are now, but it has to be resolved because both sides are going to share the blame if this goes on much longer.
Mr. Rolfe, does delaying SNAP through outdated state systems reveal a deeper strategy to erode public trust in the federal welfare before the 2026 midterms?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Yes, of course, I can repeat my question. I was asking you, does delaying SNAP through outdated state systems reveal a deeper strategy to erode public trust in federal welfare before the 2026 midterms?
No, that's not what's going on here. The answer is much simpler. There's no hidden agenda with this. It's bad enough as it is, simply in a dispute between Republicans and Democrats. Keep in mind that polls show that most Americans blame Republicans more for this shutdown. Interestingly enough, it's the Republicans that offered a clean bill to open the government, And it's the Democrats who wanted to put conditions on the bill, which have been greatly discussed, not about the insurance payments that are going up dramatically, health insurance payments. But it's the Democrats who put a condition on opening the government, whereas the Republicans didn't. And yet, the polls suggest that more people blame the Republicans for the shutdown. So this is why it's been so much harder to resolve this. And but as I said earlier, there are indications that it will be resolved in the coming week.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Rolfe, why refused $4 billion in tariff funds for SNAP when past administrations, even Trump's first term, used contingency money without hesitation?
Well, I think that part of the problem with using the tariff funding is that the status of the tariffs is insecure. If the president's tariffs are found to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, the money is going to have to be refunded. Now, they can either pay it out now and have to borrow when they have to refund it, or they can hang on to it. And I think hanging on to it is the financially prudent thing. But let me just say again, I think Peter's description is largely correct, although the polls I have seen are shifting and showing that Democrats are starting to get blamed for the shutdown too. The reality here is that the continuing resolution, the clean continuing resolution, needs 60 votes to get through the Senate. Every Republican has voted for it repeatedly. They need 9, 8, 7, something like that, Democratic votes to get it to the president's desk. It is the Democrats who have the government shut down, sort of like they're standing there holding a gun to their own head and making threats about what's going to happen if they don't pass, if you don't give us, the Democrats, what they want. That's the reality of the shutdown. The president has offered to negotiate with Democrats over the extension of the Medicaid subsidies that were intended to be temporary when they were enacted by the Democrats during COVID and are expiring on schedule, but only after the government is open. It is the Democrats that are holding Medicaid hostage. They're holding everything that's closed hostage. The president does have tremendous discretion to determine what programs are essential and what programs are not essential. And they've made a determination that what used to be called food stamps, the supplemental nutritional assistance programs, which are heavily ridden with fraud and which are subscribed to by people who aren't legitimately supposed to be receiving those benefits, that's not an essential program. But you can't point your finger at the White House and say that the White House is using hunger as a weapon, as the Axios report does, and as you implied in your introductory segment. And as an American, I'm sorry, that's just an offensive description.
Offensive to whom, sir? Offensive to whom?
Offensive to me as an American.
Offensive to you as an American? So you see yourself as representing the Americans. Let me ask you this. Can partisan brinkmanship justify turning food into a weapon, especially when children and seniors pay the price?
Food is not being used as a weapon. Okay. In the shutdown. There's no one sitting in the White House who says, let's cut off the food aid because it's going to hurt Democrats more and it'll increase pressure on Democrats to open the government. The Democrats made a decision not to vote for the clean funding resolution. The Democrats made a decision that they were going to demand that the temporary Medicaid premium assistance that was enacted during COVID and was due to expire ought to be added on, no matter what the cost. And if they didn't get that, they would vote to let the government close and keep it closed.
Thank you.
And so it is on them that the benefit of the closure rests. Now, I'm not accusing them of starving people. I think they have made a bad decision economically. They have made a bad decision politically.
When someone makes a
And
bad
the
decision
bias that is
politically
not
and
even inferred,
economically,
but is
what do you call
clear
him?
in your question,
Yes. My question now to
offends
you,
me.
my question to you, sir. When a leader makes an economic and bad decision, what do you call him? Mr. Roth,
Yes, I'm
when a
sorry.
leader makes a bad economic and political decision, that's what you just said. What do you call him?
Well, in this case, I'm having trouble hearing the question clearly.
Yes, I can repeat my question. I can repeat my question.
Please,
Okay.
please.
When a leader makes a bad economic and political decision, what do you call him?
I'm not sure what that question means. What is it? What is
If
it
you
you're
can
asking
call
me?
a question ridiculous, what would you call a leader who makes bad economic and political decisions? My question is very simple.
Your question implied that American political leaders, Democrats and Republicans, are using food as a weapon in the shutdown. Now,
Mr. Qnews, let me get back to Mr.
there-
Qnews. Mr. Qnews, could the administration's refusal to tap available tariff revenues signal a deliberate move to shrink the safety net and reshape fiscal policy through crisis?
No. The fact that it hurts people by potentially starving them somewhat is a bad consequence. It's not the motivation behind this. So let's clear that up once and for all. I am not offended that you asked the question. In fact, I'm happy that both Peter and I can answer the question
Sure.
and set the agenda straight. The fact
Sure.
is that nobody is deliberately trying to starve people. The fact that people will not be able to get their supplemental food payments is a nasty consequence of what is going on now, not the motivation for what is going on now.
What do you mean? Can you explain that more to me, sir?
Yeah, I'll try. Look, the fact is that we both explained pretty much how we got here, and the fact that Democrats and Republicans are blaming each other for the government shutdown. One, there are many consequences to the government shutdown. The fact that 2 million federal employees are not being paid, and they're also having trouble setting their table and having food too. The SNAP, which affects 42 million Americans and is also a side effect and a very bad one, which may cause people to be hungry. But my point is, it was not the motivation for the shutdown or the dispute. Nobody got up and said, gee, let's find a way to starve people. That is the point that I think we're all trying to make. It is a bad, nasty consequence of what is going on now. It is not the reason for the SNAP payments not being made.
Well, I'm trying to explore with you, sir, the reason for what's going on, because you're saying that this is a result of what's going on. So what is the reason that led to the events going on?
Hala, let's distinguish between reason and the reason and the consequences. Okay. The reason we are here today. Let me give you a little bit of history on this. Earlier this year, there was a potential government shutdown. Chuck Schumer, the Democrat who leads the Senate, gave in and to the Republicans and agreed to the bill that prevented the shutdown. The government stayed open. He was criticized a lot on the left side of the political scale here. He was criticized enormously for giving in too easily. So when the shutdown came about again a few weeks ago, he took the opposite tack. He didn't want to be criticized again. So he said, we're not going to agree to to continue funding the government. We're not going to agree to pass a continuing resolution unless you help us with these health payments that are going to be going up dramatically, and most Americans aren't going to be able to afford them. We want you to agree to that before we agree to keep the government open. The Republicans said, no, we're not going to agree to anything. Let's open the government and then we'll talk about it. And the Republicans are still saying that now. So this is where we come down to the fact that the Republicans have proposed a clean resolution to have the government reopened. The Democrats put a condition on it. So this is the crux of the argument. You can pick whichever side you want on this, but the fact is that this is where we stand now. But as I said, it is getting so serious. And keep in mind that until today, the stock market has not cared at all about this, which is an important indicator. But now the stock market, as we are speaking now, is going down a lot, and both sides will take notice of that. I expect this will be resolved within the week.
Thank you. Mr. Roth, officials warn that exhausting the emergency fund could set the stage for a repeat crisis in December. What contingency plan is in place if the government shutdown continues next month?
I suspect that the president and his domestic policy team are looking for savings that they can find in existing operations. I mean, bear in mind, we're not paying our soldiers and sailors and Marines either. A government shutdown means a government shutdown. And this is a big political game of chicken between Chuck Schumer and the White House. And Chuck Schumer is worried about his personal political standing as leader of the Senate, and he's worried about a challenge from the left in the upcoming Senate Democratic primary when he has to next run for re-election. So he's got a lot at stake here personally, not just in terms of the country. I believe that there's lots of money available to pay for essential services, and that the president will find that money, whether or not district court judges can order the president to fund a specific program is a question that is going to be litigated out through up to the Supreme Court. I don't believe that we've ever had this issue before, and I don't think, in fact, that the judges have it within their authority to order the president to fund a program in a shutdown. I believe that that discretion lies with him, and that will have to be worked out. I'm hoping that the shutdown will end before December, that the Democrats will agree to let the clean continuing resolution pass Congress and go to the president's desk for signature, so that everyone can take a deep breath, they can negotiate over Medicaid, that people can receive their SNAP benefits, that we can pay our brave soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen in the field, and that we can get back to business as usual as the holidays arrive.
Well, good luck with that. Mr. Thanos, as states struggle with decade-old tech to distribute partial benefits, what does this say about America's infrastructure preparedness for fiscal shocks?
I think what it says is that it's a democracy, and you have these disputes that come about every now and then, and some of them get blown out of proportion, like this one has. But these are features of a democratic system. Sometimes it's beautiful and sometimes it's ugly, but this is pretty much where we are.
Okay. Mr. Roth, for families that rely on SNAP to cover more than half of their monthly food costs, what does receiving only half of their usual benefits mean in practical terms at the grocery store?
Well, it means that they're going to have to tighten their belts a little bit, and I'm very sorry for that. But this is the political situation they're in, and the politicians need to understand that there are consequences to the decisions that they make. And it's, again, nobody is deliberately setting out to starve people here, which certainly is implicit in the report that you opened the segment with.
Yes, it's Axios report, not mine.
Well, okay, well then Axios ought to go take a timeout and sit in the corner with a dunce cap on, and you ought not perhaps to rely on them so much for coverage. Because it was a bad piece of journalism. And I say that as somebody who's been in the business for 40 years.
Good luck with that. Mr. Thanos, if hunger becomes a recurring feature of U.S. political standoffs, how should investors and global partners reassess confidence in American governance?
Hala, that's not going to happen. Hunger is not an issue that is at the forefront of American policy, no matter whose side you're on. So honestly,
well, let me just make one point clear,
sure.
Mr. Thanos, that we are not taking any sides. We are just trying to explore the truth, especially from people who are living the situation like yourself in the United States. For us, we need to know what's going on. We're not taking any sides.
When I mentioned,
and we here at Qnews, we are a very professional channel. We rely on various news outlets for our reports. Yes, you can go on, sir.
I'm aware of that, Hala. And by the way, when I said depending on whose side you're on, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about generally whatever side whoever's involved in the discussion is on. Is not really the issue. The issue is not that there is an overwhelming problem here where America is using poor people and hungry people as a political weapon. It is, as I think both of us have pointed out, that is a side effect and an unfortunate side effect of a political dispute on a different level. It is not the motivation. And our allies or adversaries around the world should not be looking at the U.S. and thinking, oh my goodness, what kind of regime is this, when all they do is sit around talking about how they can starve people. I think you know, and everyone else knows, that that's not what's going on here. It's unfortunately it's unfortunately one of the uglier side effects of sometimes the democratic system that allows these things to happen, because it's not that authoritarian a system. And we just have to sit around the table and work it out. And that's what we're going to do now. As I said before, and I say again, I'm quite confident this will be resolved within a matter of a few days, if only because the consequences are getting very severe. We've talked a lot about people starving, and it's going to get worse if we do not resolve this problem now, and everybody will get the blame. That will get them to the table.
Mr. Rolfe, beyond the direct food gap, how will this uncertainty and partial funding strain the resources of local food banks?
The fortunate thing about America, as de Tocqueville describes in his landmark work, Democracy America, from about 1820, which still pertains today, is the volunteer spirit that makes this country work. And many of the food banks and other programs are not dependent on the SNAP program or government funded. They are funded by private organizations, church institutions, mosques, synagogues, people of faith. And while the demand for their product is increasing, as it often does in times of economic uncertainty, it is also important to remember that relative to the size of our country, 300 million people, there are actually very few people in America who you can actually say are starving. This is why they had to invent the phrase food insecurity, so that they could so that the people in the issue space who deal with this could continue to have a cause to rally around. There are lots of ways that people in this country get fed. We consider it a moral obligation. Those of us of faith consider it a spiritual obligation as well. And so I think while the voluntary system is being tested, I think that it will prove resoundingly strong. And so I am grateful that I live in a country where we have those kind of private institutions that run parallel to what the government is doing, so that when we do get into periods where the government is inefficient, and it's also important to remember that programs like food assistance are not entirely run by Washington. The states have an awful lot to say about who can receive benefits, how those benefits are distributed, what those benefits cover. It's a place where what we call federalism is very much in evidence. And so you're going to find different situations from state to state. I imagine that the situation in New York and California is going to be very different from the situations in Texas and Florida, for example. 4 of the largest states, very different situations because they have very different political systems. But I have confidence that the voluntary segment of the food feeding population is going to come through this and remind everybody how important the voluntary sector is in this country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peter Rolfe, contributing editor at the Newsweek, and special thanks to Mr. Peter Tanas, chairman of the Links Investment Advisory. You made things very clear to us. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable and decent discussion. And as the shutdown deepens, hunger becomes policy, and 42 million Americans are left wondering, is their next meal hostage to politics? This brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. My name is Halal Hamalawi. Thank you so much for joining us.